I'm All right, hi everybody. If I can get everyone's attention, we're going to get started. My name is Mike Thane. I'm the co-chair of the New Lawyers Committee. We put on these presentations. We do basically 6 a year. They're called Trial by Fire No More. We usually get a senior counsel or judge or someone to come in to give us the benefit of their experience and knowledge. It helps us socialize, network, as well as get professional education credits. There'll be a reception after where we can all socialize afterwards. If you're just in Trial Lawyers membership, if you're not already a member, feel free to talk to myself or some of the other members we have present. And of course, first of all, I'd like to thank ZSA for being our sponsor, is going to give us our refreshments tonight. And also lets us offer these at no cost to you. So I'll get to our main speaker now. We're very lucky this evening to have Paul Kent Snowsell speak to us. Paul is a barrister, senior litigation partner with Lindsay Kenny LLP, and is also a member of the Board of Governors for Trial Lawyers. He's conducted in numerous trials and hearings in various areas of the law over his 28-year career. His practice has encompassed acting for criminal defendants, including Stanley Cup rioters, as well as personal injury cases, and acting against lawyers in negligence claims and on fee reviews, as well as suing police officers for assault and battery. So through that, Paul has cross-examined lawyers, medical experts, use of force experts, and even a sitting Supreme Court justice. He maintains a robust general litigation practices, taking many of his cases on referral from or as litigation counsel for other lawyers. So please welcome me and join me in welcoming Paul and giving us his expertise.
Thanks, Mike. Just a pitch on TLABC. If you're not a member, there's no good reason why you should not be a member of this august organization. I've been a member for years and years and years, been on the executive. It's been an invaluable addition to my practice. You have great people that you can draw upon for their expertise. They put on great seminars, so if you haven't signed up, sign up or go to your senior partners and say, don't cheap out, pay for my membership. There's my pitch. So I can sort of gauge on the experience here. I know it's the young lawyers section. Has everyone done a trial is my first question. If you've done a trial, put up your hand. Okay, and if you've done a Supreme Court trial on your own, put up your hand. All right, if you've juniored a Supreme Court trial, put up your hand. Okay, and next question is, how many people, I know you're early on in your careers, are there family lawyers here? Okay, few. Criminal defense and PI types. Okay, all right. So as I go along, if you've got a question, feel free to jump in. What I intend to do is give you an overview of cross-examination, then deal with experts on how to cross-examine them, and then we've got questions, we can go into that. A couple of great books on cross-examination are Francis Wellman's book, which I brought with me. It's old and it's a little dated, but it's got all sorts of gems of how to do things and how not to do things, and it is called The Art of Cross-Examination. And it's still my go-to when I get into situations where I don't quite know how to approach a problem, and I highly recommend it. So that's number one book to get or pull out of the library. And the other one I use all the time is called Examination of Witnesses in Criminal Cases by a guy named Earl Levy, QC. If you're not a criminal practitioner, don't worry. You can take a lot of what's in here and apply it to the civil realm. And it gives really good examples of how to deal with a whole bunch of different types of problematic witnesses. So I'd recommend that you either take them, maybe they're online, I don't know. I'm kind of old school, I get books, but you can find it on the internet or pull it out of the library. It's a great resource. Cross-examination is the sexy part of being a lawyer, we all think. Yeah, because we watch all the movies and we watch television and all of your friends and family go, oh, you're going to get a cross-examine and beat up that witness. And it makes for great TV and movies. And unfortunately, the biggest letdown of my career was when I was junioring an old barrister in a big criminal case, and I go, man, this is kind of dull and unexciting, because it's measured, and you have to be polite, and you have to ask simple questions and wait for the witness to answer, and all of these things that are completely opposite what our notions of, at least when I came out of law school, of what you're going to be doing in a courtroom. The minute you launch into the sort of movie style of cross-examination is immediately you're shut down by the judge, and you got to knock it off. So that was my big disappointment. And you don't have these moments where the witness wilts on the stand and says, yes, I made it all up, it was a terrible lie, you're right. It never happens, at least never happened to me. It's a win by 1,000 cuts. It's small incremental wins in doing a cross-examination in my experience, depending on what type of case and what it is you're trying to accomplish. So, how do you start? Well, you've got to get the witness list from the other side, and generally in a civil case, or in a criminal case, you get some kind of will-say statement. You go, all right, this person's going to say this, and what are the areas that are problematic? So you got to come at it before and think about it. So, if you're preparing a cross-examination, what do you think they're going to say? If you're in a civil case, you've got discovery, and maybe you've got a pretrial deposition to work off of, so that's good. When I do cross-exam, I have to start, when I'm writing it, with the end in mind. What am I trying to accomplish? That's the first thing you've got to get into your head, all right? And then, how am I going to do that? It depends on the type of witness you've got. So you have to craft your questions dependent on the witness you're going to be cross-examining. And I still, to this day, write out my cross-examination. And it's a script for me, because I know where I want to go. I have questions that I specifically want to ask, and I make a note of the answer I'm trying to elicit or the issue that I'm trying to raise with the expert. So I have my notes in my trial book when I get up there. It's the rare advocate that can get up there and on the fly wing it through a brilliant cross-examination. The really good cross-examiners have spent hours and hours of prep time to make it look effortless, and that's what you have to do. If you don't do that, you're going to start scrambling around, you're going to get lost, and you're not in control of your witness. A big part of an effective cross-examination is making your witness understand that you're now in my office, this is where I work, this is my territory, and you're going to listen to me and answer my questions. So a big part of that is having a commanding presence in a courtroom. You have to have a commanding voice. You have to, whether or not you understand everything about this person, portray like you do. One of the great advantages we have now is the internet and Facebook and Instagram and all of this background you can do. And what I do, and I did it in a trial this week, is I go on and I find out about who is this person I'm going to cross-examine. I had a defendant recently in a road rage case, the one I was doing this week. I go, who is this person? And you can get all sorts of information. Now, it might not be at all relevant to your case, but it's very unsettling to your witness when you start cross-examining about, so you used to be a junior forest warden. How the hell would they know that? And so you get that feeling, like, well, what else do they know? The woman I was cross-examining did music videos for, this is true, a Hell's Angel rapper named Hal Hefner. So I go, weren't you on the yacht in the Hal Hefner video? And you can see the look on it going, oh yeah. Doesn't have anything to do with where I want to go, but in the back of their mind they're going, what else does this person know that they know, so they aren't going to play games with you? And it's a real advantage. Just ask 2 or 3 of those things that can be very unsettling to a witness, because they're always wondering, uh-oh, I better tell the truth, because I don't know what else he or she knows, okay? In Levy's book, he describes all these different kinds of witnesses and how to approach them. And I listed 12 of them. There's the lying witness, which is rare, the honest witness, which is generally what you find, or try to be honest, mistaken witness, the biased witness, the vain witness, the talkative witness, the evasive witness, the exaggerating witness, the witness who can't remember, there's a child witness, an elderly witness, and the friendly, helpful witness. And you'll get a gauge for it as they're giving their evidence in chief. Say, okay, well, what is this person's relationship to the plaintiff. I mean, if it's the plaintiff, obviously that's who it is. But if you have a family member, well, that's going to be the helpful person. They may also be evasive about things that they don't want to say, that don't cast their family member in the best light. And this is a thing to keep in the back of your head as you're taking down the notes of the evidence. So you've got to analyze as you go along, what type of witness is this? Are they nervous? Is the nervousness because usually it's because they're in a big courtroom, never been there before and haven't testified? Or when you get these experts, that it's the usual experts that come in there, and in PI cases, it's usually the same experts for the plaintiff, and the psychiatrist, the neuropsych, the shoulder guy, the hip guy, and they're always doing battle. And they'll be very relaxed in the courtroom. A great guy that I always use is an economist named Rob Carson. Now, Rob Carson is an economist who'll give you cost of future care figures and past wage loss valuation, all that kind of stuff. But Rob comes in, the court goes, "Oh, hello, Mr. Carson." The jury goes, "Oh, this guy must be somebody special because the judge knows him by name." And you're already got a leg up on your learned friend because you've established the credibility of your person before they've even opened their mouths. Right? So that's an important thing to consider when you're picking your experts. And I'll come back to that in a bit. Keeping good notes. I am the worst for this. You've got to write down what your witness is saying when they're giving their evidence in chief, which is okay because you're waiting to cross-examine. But when you're cross-examining, there's a whole, at least for me, the adrenaline's pumping, you think about where I want to go, you're trying to watch what the answer is. You've got to write it down. And if you're at the junior stage, you got to write it down yourself, or you have to be able to type pretty quickly on your computer, which is very difficult to do if you're standing at the podium doing a cross-examination. Come up with some shorthand way to keep accurate notes, because that's going to be your basis for your closing argument. And I can tell you that with younger lawyers especially, they make an incorrect note of the evidence, and I'm the first one to pop up to say that's not what the witness said. That's not a correct recitation of the evidence, and it's objectionable to do that, and the courts will admonish counsel for not getting it right. So it's really important. I still haven't figured out the best way to do it. When you're planning your cross, of course, you've got your pre-planned script and what you want to get out of the witness, but you're also going to be making, what I do is I use a red pen, I still use pen and paper, and I put an asterisk beside something that I want to come back to that they've said in chief that I need to address in cross-exam. And they have trial paper with the fancy line down the 1/3, 2/3 of the page. So I'll write on the cross-exam part what question I want to ask and what to come back to. Don't think that because you're in the court and if you're not quite ready to go, you can say to the court, "I'd like to stand down for 5 minutes in order to review my notes before I begin cross-examination." Take a look at the clock. It can be a real ally because we take breaks at around 11, and then we go to 12:30. We come back at 2 in Supreme Court. We go to around 3, and then we're done at 4. So if you can keep an eye on the clock, number one, the court clerk will be your friend because they like to take breaks. And so if you say, "I know the time, my lord or my lady," and then you can take the time if it's close to the time, and the court will say, "Okay, we'll come back after the break," and it gives you some time to prepare and review. Always a good thing to do. And to keep an eye on that clock to sort of see, okay, how much time do I have? We're getting close to lunch. It's 20 after. I don't want to start my cross now. We'll come back after lunch. And judges generally will be open to that. Okay? Just little things that you learn as you go. Going for the jugular is rarely, if ever, a good tactic. It's like the assault on the citadel usually gets you killed. And immediately, the witness you're cross-examining is going to get his or her back up and be defensive, which is not what you want. You want them to feel relaxed, a little off their guard. Okay, we're all here to do something as far as getting to the truth of this. Your part is the witness, my part is the lawyer for Mrs. Bloggs, and away I go. And we're just trying to get at the truth here, witness. So let's get that. That's our premise here. And they go, "Oh, okay, I don't have the saber-toothed tiger coming at me," and they can relax a bit. And it's that old adage, you get more, what is it, better vinegar, honey than vinegar, as far as what you want to get out of people than being combative. That's with lay witnesses. I do a lot of cross-examining of police officers that will just not move off a point, and I get rather combative with them. And that can show, you're not getting the answers you want, but you're showing to the judge, if I said black, this person's gonna say white, and you can illustrate a bias or an unbending will to even admit the smallest fact that they disagree with. So that can be an effective way of doing it. The other thing to remember is if you've got a theory of the case that you want to get out there, if you're not getting anything out of that witness, keep asking the questions that support your theory of the case. The witness is going to say no, 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 but you're reinforcing your theory of the case with each question you ask. You don't really care about the answer because you know you're not going to get anywhere, and judges see this. You know, judges usually have been practicing lawyers and for a number of years and have done trials, and they know what to expect. So it's something you can use in your final argument as to the way the witness came across. But it's all part of the art. I don't know that it's a science. And as you do it, you adopt your own style and how to go about it. If you want to learn how to cross-examine properly, number one, go to trial, go to hearings, go to police commission night hearings, do trial work. You will never ever become a half decent cross-examiner if you don't go to court, because you got nothing to practice your skill set with. It's like with any hobby. If you're going to play a guitar, if you don't practice, you're not going to get any better. So go. Do not be afraid of going to trial. There is no trapdoor that opens up into an alligator pit and you disappear. It gets embarrassing. I remember the first time in criminal court, a packed courtroom in remand court, I mucked up an election. I'll never forget how to do an election or a guilty plea ever since. I was mortified. I skulked out, and the senior barristers in there all had a good laugh down at Main Street where there's a cafeteria, and they said, don't worry about it. And everybody's done it. So be willing to take the risks, and if you don't get it quite right, it's okay. I mean, know your law, know your facts, know your case, but don't be afraid of the courtroom. The more you go to court, the more comfortable you are. You go in there and go, hey, I had an argument with the young counsel in January, set up on what I call my side. I'm plaintiff. My witnesses are closest to me in the witness box. So I always sit in plaintiff counsel where the witness box is. Defense counsel's got these boxes piled here, there, and every document in the world, and I said, you're on my side. And he said, no, I'm not. I said, well, I think you are, and here's why. I said, it's not a rule, it's customary. And if we're gonna get this trial done in any sort of semblance of good order, without starting off on a really bad foot, politely ask you to move your stuff to the other side, because judges generally expect plaintiff counsel to be on the side of the witness box. It's not a rule, but if you're gonna get your client or your witnesses comfortable in their evidence in chief, they want to be, you want to have this conversation where they're kind of close to you. They still have to make sure that they get their evidence out to the judge, but these are little things. And then when you go into court, you go, okay, like I said, you're in my courtroom. I mean, I can do that, I'm older. You're in my spot, and don't be mean about it, but if you can say, if you had any experience, you got to be polite about it. If you knew it, if you've been in a courtroom before, you know that the standard is the counsel for the plaintiff is here. So those are little things that show you're in command of the courtroom. Clerks talk to judges. Have anybody here, has people clerked, anybody here? Okay, so you know, I mean, gossip's like not the right word, but clerks talk about counsel and judges talk about counsel, don't they?
You said it.
Yeah, you bet they do. So if you're arrogant, if you're rude, if you're condescending, the clerks will talk about it. If you're polite, if you get their breaks in, if you're respectful, that goes back to counsel and to the judge as well. So these are little things that you'll learn as you go along. Volunteer to junior, senior members. I don't know what size firms everybody's at, but generally speaking, you've got hour targets or billing targets and month end, and everybody's crunching bills and the usual profitability of a private law firm. You may have to say to these senior members of the bar, if they're not doing a lot of trials, I want the junior so-and-so, go talk to so-and-so and say, I'd like to volunteer my time to junior you on this trial. That's how you learn. And you can learn a whole lot by watching good counsel and how they cross-examine. You can ask questions. You can be in the barrister's room and talk to other lawyers down at Hornby Street or Howe Street, whatever street we're on, and say, okay, what kind of case you working on? It's a great place to sort of pick brains and pick up strategies. And I do it all the time. I still do it. Inquire of senior counsel if you're watching a case. You can go into court and watch a case, obviously. Like you're all looking at me going, are you insane? Who's got the time to go into court and watch a case? But do it. If you're mucking around and get out of court early, if you're in chambers, go to another courtroom and see what's going on and watch. Lawyers love to talk about themselves. So if you're asking questions of a lawyer about what are you doing, why are you doing it, I was interested in this, what was your approach, they love to tell you. And I've never ever been shut down by asking questions to senior counsel about what they're doing or what they're working on or why they're doing it in a certain way. And it's very, very helpful and very, very useful. The thing is that as you get more senior, you're going, okay, well, I've done more trials than 90% of the barristers around, and you get to that point and you go, okay, well, I've probably seen it before, I've done it before, which is a real advantage. And as long as you have the ability to talk to people, you got to be outgoing. If you're going to be a trial lawyer, you bloody well better be outgoing, because the wallflowers are going to die in court. If you have a quiet voice, if the judge gets mad at you, it's not as bad as it used to be. I'll tell you, I could have 100 war stories, but I'll tell you one later. And you start, getting upset or losing your voice or tearing up, you got to have just this armor-plated exterior, like nothing phases me. All right, Judge, I thank you, and move on. You can't let it get you off your game. All right, keep your eye on the goal. Don't get flustered. I get flustered. I get annoyed. I get angry, but I can't say it, and I can't do anything about it. Cross-examination is, anybody here play poker? Nobody. All right, take it up, because you are going to learn how to bluff. It happens in almost every case. You're cross-examining, you think, oh, this is going brilliantly. The judge is loving this, and he or she's writing like mad in their bench book. And then an answer comes out that you go, that just killed my case. It never does. It's like this. In a trial, there's, oh, this is a slam dunk, this is great, and the next day, this is going terrible, we're going to lose. At least that's how it's terrible, right? It's an adrenaline rush, but it goes like this. So if you're cross-examining and an answer comes out that is hurtful to your case, and you just go, you can't do that. You have to pretend like that was the answer you expected and just roll with it and carry on. And it's tough. And so you've just got to take a second to regroup. Okay, make a note of that, come back around to it, but continue on with your program. It does happen, and it's not a good feeling, but you got to deal with it. You learn to deal with it by doing it. Talk about writing out your script. Very important when you're cross-examining, especially lay people who are nervous and don't have the education we have, to keep your sentences short. Number one, keep your words small and understandable. When we all like to use big words and Latin phrases because we're educated and we read all sorts of learned articles about things. You will have people, when you're cross-examining a lay witness, what were you doing prior to that? And they look at you. What? Prior to that, what were you doing? They don't know what prior means. What were you doing before that? Oh, click. These things we all take for granted, but when you're dealing with lay people, you need to really, dumb it down is not the right word, you need to keep it short, simple, and concise so that they can understand. If they're looking puzzled at you, don't plow on. Say, did you understand my question? And they'll probably go, no. or you get some odd answer because they'll, in their head, think that that word means something that it doesn't. So you need to make sure that the question asked is understandable by the witness so you can elicit the answer that you want. And you've got to watch your witness. And you've got to watch the judge. A lot of lawyers I see not watching the judge. If you think you're getting all this great stuff from a witness that happens to be hearsay, and objections we can deal with later, but generally I'll say, okay, it's not hurting my case, and they go on, and the judge does this. And the person's got their head buried in their trial book asking question after question. It's not something that the judge is interested in and not something that they can be used as evidence. So pay attention to what's going on in the courtroom. Another tip, take a tape measure to court. In every courtroom, there's 2 counsel tables. Has anybody cross-examined somebody and said, well, how far away from you were you from that person? 100 feet. All right, well, how far is that? Well, that's about from me to you. You know, they have no gauge of distance. So if you can go in with a tape measure, you can measure counsel table. Okay, counsel table is 4 feet long, right? Was it about the distance of counsel table? Yeah. Then you've got something concrete. When you were talking distances, were you going north? I think so. In traffic cases, don't do that. Don't use north, south, east, west. I use, were you heading, if you're coming on in the highway from, say, White Rock, were you heading towards the mountains or are you heading towards the border? Oh, I was heading towards the border. Okay, that would be south, not north. Were you heading towards UBC or were you going to Burnaby? Okay, Burnaby is east, UBC is west. You will get people confused over left and right. I'm not making this up, it happens. So you need to make sure that they are understanding what it is you're asking and to make sure that their answer makes sense in the context that you want it to. And it's really important to get this down. Distances, and judges will say, well, you know, people's judgment of distances are notoriously bad, unless you've got something to gauge it with. 10 feet, 20 feet, 30 meters, they really don't know. You get ridiculous height. I think he was, 5'6", versus 6'2", but they just, you've got to have some reference point is what the point I'm trying to make. Have always a reference point for your witness to pin something to, okay? Prepare, prepare, prepare. And if you think you're prepared, prepare some more. Do a mock cross-examination. Grab somebody in your office and say, hey, I want to run by these questions for you. Cross-examining your colleagues is great because they're smarter than the average bear, and they're going to be more difficult than usually the person you're coming up against, especially when dealing with lay witnesses. You will get suggestions, or you'll get an answer that you didn't expect. Well, why would you answer like that? Oh, I thought you were asking this. It really helps to hone the cross-examination. So do that. Practice on people. If you are dealing with an expert, run a mock cross-examination of your expert, because that's going to be really enlightening as to what answers you're going to get, where that evidence could go, and what to do if it's not going where you want it to go. It's really important to do these exercises. If you've got your script as to where you want to go, and I see this all the time with junior counsel, they're going, okay, my next question is this, question 27B. Isn't it true that it was sunny out? No, it was the middle of the night, it was raining. And you get this, everything stops. Because the next question is premised on the answer, yeah, it was sunny out. And it's really, you can see it in court that they didn't anticipate that answer, and now the whole script is useless to them, and they start wallowing and backtracking. Be prepared, like, what are those machines? Like a pachinko machine, the ball goes this way, that way, trying to get to the end. You gotta be prepared for that. Oh, it went this way, okay, if it goes this way, then I go down this line of questioning. If it went over here, I'll do that line of questioning. You can't stick to your script because things come up that you don't anticipate. You gotta be able to move with it and adjust accordingly, all right? If you're not making progress in the way you're asking your questions, you might have to change up the way you're asking the questions, or go in a more roundabout way. You will have client or counsel object. Well, what's the relevance of that? And you can say to a judge, it will become clear with my next few questions, and they'll give you some leeway on that, because as I say, assault on the citadel is usually not the best tactic. You have to go in a roundabout way in order to accomplish what you accomplish, and judges will give you some leeway to do that. Of course, if you go far off track, they're gonna say, I think we're far off track, and bring it around, but you gotta be able to shift and move as it goes. How many people have heard never ask a question you don't know the answer to? Bad advice, okay? It's bad advice because lawyers generally, trial lawyers, everybody's got a gut instinct, right? Everybody doesn't go with your gut. You get a feeling, you go, okay. Sometimes you're gonna ask the question you don't know the answer to on a flyer. Now, ask sort of an innocuous one about, I did it this week. I had this woman on this driving case, the Hal Hefner video gal, and it was a driving road rage case. And I said, she's given my client the bird and roaring around the car, and I said, you have a number of driving infractions, don't you? I didn't know. Yes. Speeding? I don't know. Yes. Illegal lane changes? Yes. And again, they're going, how the hell does he know that? Illegal
You
U-turns?
researched her though, didn't you look it up on Justin and stuff and see all of her?
No, I didn't, because I didn't get around to it. But she goes, see, there you guys are going, this guy's an idiot. Everybody knows you do that now. You know, but you don't know when you get all these answers, and the defense lawyer got up and says, obviously Mr. Ken Snowsell had access to all of her driving records. I didn't have one of them. But you know, you get a gut feeling, and sometimes you need to explore that. If it's not going where you want it to go, stop. But you can ask these probing questions and get some good stuff out. And so if you got that gut feeling as a litigator, you think there's more there's something they're not telling you, go with it. Careful, because it could burn you, but I go with it, and then good stuff comes. Questions, how to ask questions. Criminal lawyers do cross-examination way differently than civil lawyers. Civil lawyers go, I suggest to you, sir, that on the day in question, blah, 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 blah. And they're going, why are you suggesting that? Why would you suggest that? They do. You see it all the time. Criminal lawyers will say, you'd been out till you got home at 7 a.m., and it's like a yes or no answer. And you're going to say, you know, Mike knows this, he's a criminal law firm. And you go, okay, and you want to elicit the answer and not give him an out. And you want to be very precise and close with your questioning, right? Whereas in civil cases, I suggest to you, I put it to you. To me, it sounds stilted and awkward. Tons of civil lawyers do it. I don't like it personally as a style, but that's something you'll develop, and depending on where your practice is, you may use that, you may not. Just depends on what you're comfortable with. Don't give them an, oh, why did you do that? Well, you know, don't give them a platform. That's a question that just gives them a platform to expand upon their answer. You want to close them in. Sometimes you can ask the question, why would you do that if they've done something really dumb, like my video gal. Well, why would you burn around my clients with their 2 kids in the back, stop beside them, mouth fuck you, and give them the figure? Why would you do that? I don't know. I was mad. Good. There's the answer you can use, and you build on it. So sometimes you can ask. It all depends on the situation and where it's going. We talked about keeping accurate notes. Let's talk a bit about expert cross-examination, a whole different field. You do get into expert evidence in criminal cases, accident reconstruction, drug cases, that kind of stuff. More so in family cases where you're dealing with child psychologists, you deal with that a lot. Actuaries, personal injury cases, of course, you got all these medical experts. And cross-examining medical experts is the bane of my existence, because I was not a science guy in his undergrad. I was a philosophy major. So I see a biology text and I cringe, and I see chemistry formulas and I go, oh my God, and physics comes back to me flowing. So in my preparation, I always rely upon my expert. Here's the exit report from the other side. Send it to your expert. Read it. I'm going to call you. Don't do it all by email and texting. Call your person and say, can I come down and talk to you about this report? Sure. Medical people are like lawyers. They love to talk about what they do, and they can be very helpful. And that helps you prepare your cross-examination. Because now you've got your expert saying, oh, well, he says this, but that's not right. If you're talking about some kind of a nerve block that's supposed to do this, and they go, no, that's not the latest literature. And in expert reports, of course, the docs are citing all sorts of studies to back up this and back up that. Your expert, if it's a good expert, are going to know those studies and tell you whether they're right, wrong, or somewhere in between. If your expert doesn't know the studies, time to get another expert, right? So these are all things to suss out as you're going along. When you have an expert, what's the expectation from the court or from a jury when you put an expert on the stand?
They're gonna be right and stuff, right?
Yeah, and they're going to tell you something about some area that's too complicated for you to understand as a layperson. They're an expert, so already they're elevated in the eyes of the jury, not necessarily in the eyes of a judge, because they've seen enough experts that are wonks and cranks that they have a little more reserved opinion of them. So they're going to the jury expects your expert's going to be truthful, they're going to be reliable, and they're going to be qualified, and that they have the knowledge, the skill set, the expertise to opine on a particular point. Whether it's an engineer who's an expert, or whether it's a neuropsychologist or psychiatrist, the expectation is they're there for a reason, and if they're in court, juries think this way, well, they must be really good because they're here as an expert in front of the court. I can tell you that is not necessarily the case. You do have some very senior people that are excellent on the stand and can articulate their points of view extremely well, and there are some more junior people. It seems to me that, especially when you're doing ICBC work, that there's that whole crew of doctors, that's not a nice term, but they sort of move through, and now we're on to a new generation, and some of them don't have a lot of experience in giving testimony. And so that's something you need to work with through your expert. You got to prep your expert, and you got to use your expert to prep on your cross-exam on the other side. So when you get an expert report, what else do they have to provide to you with the report? 11.6 records, yeah. The instructing letter. That is great fodder for cross-examination. Because usually law firms have precedent instruction letters, and somebody goes, hey, have you got a precedent letter to medical leave report? Yeah, here you go. And I've seen it happen, and they just fill in the blanks and they send it off, right? You've got to spend a lot of time going through that instructing letter. Well, what do the instructing letter ask the expert to do? First things, this is in prep for your cross. Is the expert qualified to give the opinion that the lawyer's seeking from that expert? Maybe they're not. There's some cases out there where the judges have commented, if you've got a soft tissue case, you should probably have a physiatrist there, and somebody's got an orthopedic surgeon. And the courts have said on a number of occasions, why are you bringing a knife to a gunfight? That's in the case, in the judgment. So you got to make sure they got the right expert for the right job, because that's your first line of cross-examination. You're an orthopedic surgeon. This person doesn't have any bony injuries. Why? Don't ask why you're here, but you say to the judge, why is that guy here? They're not soft tissue experts, that type of thing. When you're prepping for the cross of the expert, and I'm going to talk in a medical context because that's probably where it comes up with them, they usually get sent a binder, they should, with clinical records. And your job as counsel is to direct your expert to what you want them to look at in the clinicals. You can't tell them what conclusion to draw. You say, I'd like you to refer you to page 87 of the clinical records, or whatever it is you want them to do. Because your instructing letter is going to be there, and you're going to cross-examine about it. So if the lawyer for getting the expert just says, here's the clinicals. I've seen this happen. Here's the clinical records of this patient from 2010 to the present. And in the report, they say, I reviewed the following in the preparation report, there's a big appendix. And I go, well, how long did it take you to read 10 years of clinical records? It takes me an hour to read 3 pages because it's all that cryptic, scrawly stuff, and you got your magnifying glass and you think it means this, you call the doc and all that kind of stuff. So how long did you spend reviewing these clinical records, doctor? Spent an hour. And you reviewed 10 years of clinical records in an hour? Well, I scanned them. You see, and you're making these incremental points as you go in front of the jury, in front of the judge. Facts and assumptions. You know, when you're tendering an expert report, you're supposed to set out the facts and assumptions upon which the expert's been asked to rely in coming to their conclusion. That's generally poorly done as far as the instruction that it goes. And if the jury or the judge is asked to guess at what facts and assumptions the expert was making, at best you get the report kicked out, and at worst it goes to the weight of the opinion, because I don't know what fact and assumption they relied upon. Key point when you're in trial and you've got your expert relying on facts and assumptions, you need to prove those facts as part of your case, because if you don't, the house foundation disappears. And a lot of lawyers forget that. Well, the judges say, well, was that in evidence, Mr. Smith? Well, it's in the report. No, I know what's in the report, but did I hear any evidence on that point? And then you get that deer in the headlights look, hopefully from the other side going, no. So it's very important that when you get that report, if you're cross-examining, and if you're gonna make objections to the report, have they proved the assumptions and facts underlying the opinion? Because that's where expert reports on a medical nature always get chipped away at. Same with engineering reports. So that's an important thing to do. Go with your expert. Hey, is that fact, is that a correct assumption? Your expert may say, no, it's not, and here's why. Are the assumptions made from the review of the clinical records correct? Because sometimes your expert will think a word says one thing when in fact it doesn't say that. So you really have to be careful and go through all that with a fine-tooth comb to determine if they're doing the right thing. If you're cross-examining, how long was my client examined by you? 20 minutes. Ah, I see, doctor, and that, in your opinion, was a thorough examination of my 10 years of soft tissue injuries and complaints of my client. Well, I already knew a lot about your patient, about your client, blah, blah, blah. So, you know, that's for your closing argument. You say, okay, well, 20 minutes of an examination, and does that include waiting time in your reception area? You know, and you can chip away at it that way. It's very effective. Is your expert neutral? Generally speaking, we at TLABC go to the ICBC website and pull doctors' billing numbers. And Dr. Smith, isn't it true that you've only done IMEs for ICBC for the past 10 years and you bill $3 million a year to ICBC and that's your sole source of income? And they go, well, I wouldn't put it that way. When's the last time you did a surgery, sir? Oh, I haven't done a surgery for 10 years. I see. Do you maintain a private practice seeing private patients, sir? No. You have a home office where you do clinical records reviews for ICBC and write expert reports. Well, I wouldn't put it that way. Well, let's look at your billing numbers. And of course, the weight of the opinion is lessened by the fact that that doctor is sole source of income is from one defense insurance company, and the argument is, and not necessarily, so the argument is there's going to be an implied bias to help out the defense because you're not going to screw over your person that's paying you. So those are arguments that can be made. What I do is, when I'm asking for a report, try and educate my expert on some of the law behind expert reports, because they don't read cases. Obviously, they're doctors. They went into medicine because they don't want to do law. They don't even read the cases where they were experts in, which I found hard to believe. When I was interviewing my experts, I said, well, remember this case that you did 2 years ago where that came up as an issue? How did that turn out? I'm like, what? I mean, here, they don't read the cases. So send them their cases and or give them an overview of in this case, and what the judges said about them, because they don't look. Some do, but a lot don't, which shocked me. If you're cross-examining the other side, do your research. Has this person testified in court? Was she accepted as an expert? Was her opinion tossed? Why was it tossed? How much weight was given to her opinion? You gotta do all of that research, and you gotta be able to trot it out if you can. Some judges are tighter on this than others, which you say, well, your opinion was discarded in this case, in this case, in this case, in this case, and you've got the same clauses in this report, then you've got a good argument. I did that. There's a, does anybody know who Dr. Bishop is? Dr. Bishop got a PhD in spine injury, but he's got an MD degree, but he's always trotted out by ICBC as this expert and in spinal injury, which he's not. And I just cross-examined him in January again, and he was criticized by the court in previous cases for his phrase that soft tissue injuries resolve in 6 to 8 weeks. Mm-hmm. You can find it in every Bishop report ever written, I swear, unless he's changed this, because I was kind of hard on him at Cross, so he's probably not going to do that anymore. But you say, okay, in this report you wrote soft tissue injuries resolve in 6 to 8 weeks. That's right. And you wrote it in this report, yeah. And in this case, you said the same thing. That's right. And in this case, you said the same. That's right. And it's in my client's report, isn't it? Yes. Is that your boilerplate phrase for your expert reports? No, those are the facts. This is what he said to me when I was cross-examined. I go, all right. Whatever the case, whatever the plaintiff, whatever the injury, soft tissue resolved in 6 to 8 weeks. That's your firm opinion, is it, doctor? That's right. Judges give me the look like, you give me what? Yeah. And so you got to work at it. And experts are experts for a reason. Word of caution. Don't go off your script with doctors and experts, because it'll kill you. And they will give them a forum to pontificate from the stand as to why your dumbass question is the wrong thing to ask. And then you're just burying yourself. You got to be really careful with that. Especially, I find when I cross-examine about studies, which I have a rudimentary understanding with at the best of times, going off track on that and making that next question and without being firm in your knowledge of it can really create a problem for you. Now, judges will generally, well, the doctor dealt with that in his evidence and cross-examination by this, but it can be very harmful if you're in front of a jury. Because again, these experts have an elevated status already, so you got to be careful with that and don't go too far or at all off your script. Make sure you reviewed all your questions with your expert to make sure that it works out for you. Expert certification, and I've got a handout that I'll give you guys when I'm done. That's what we're doing for time here. See, I could blab on forever about this. Let's talk about Rules 11.6 and 11.2, which are your expert report provisions, and it sets out there what it is your expert report is supposed to have. Read that rule. I mean, read it once, you go, okay, yeah, I know that is an expert report. Read it again and make sure that you're ticking all the boxes, because if you're not, you're gonna have a problem. If the other side hasn't ticked all the boxes, you've got some cross-examination fodder. The certification is now become the boilerplate. I certify that I am, an expert, and I'll give my evidence in conformity with that duty, and I won't be an advocate of any party, blah, blah, blah. And it's always the second or first paragraph. And if it's not in there, then you can object to the report even going in. And there's been some cases that say you don't have that certification, the report doesn't go in. So that's something to keep in mind. But bring it home to the doctor. I was cross-examining a psychiatrist in this case, and I said, you see that phrase, not to be an advocate for any party, doctor? Yes. I go, let's, you know what that means? Yes. I go, it means you're not going to tout a position. Yes. I go, okay, well, let's look at this comment. He had some phrase about my client that was a ne'er-do-well, didn't mitigate, didn't do this, didn't do that. I said, you read all these clinical records, did you, doctor? Yes. Well, let's go through some of them. Mr. Bloggs is anxious to return to work and has made every effort possible to comply with his rehabilitation program. Did you read that, doctor? What what does it say again? I may have missed that. Oh, okay, well, fair enough, there's a lot to go through here, these that show compliance with treatment, wanting to go back to work, and the doc, it was great, it doesn't happen very often, he says, well, I wasn't asked to do that by the lawyer. I go, oh, I was asked to provide an opinion regarding your client's refusal to adhere to treatment, and I understood that he didn't go, based on the instructions I got from the lawyer. Beautiful. At least I think so. I'm still waiting on judgment. I finished that trial in January. I just got a memo from the court today going, we're gonna be a while further. But all this stuff comes from that really drudging homework of late at night with your espresso, and reading these clinicals and go, well, how could the doctor say that when it's right there in the clinicals that they did all these things? They missed it. And you have the judge go along and reading along with you, because you can extract those clinicals. And it's very effective to do that, and really compromises the other side's expert. What else? Talked about instructing letters, getting expert opinions. Don'ts for, if the other side has, in getting the expert opinion, and this happened in a case it did, they sent the expert, who was a use of force expert, the examination for discovery transcripts. Great huge transcripts. Here's the defense cop's transcript of what he did, and here's the plaintiff's version of events. Read through them. You can't do that. And there's lots of cases to say that's completely improper to do that, because then you're asking the expert to draw their own conclusions from the basis of what they read and how to interpret it. And so it's a completely wrong way to do it. Just like willy-nilly sending clinical records. Here's the clinicals, draw your own conclusions. So if that's happening in the reports that you're looking at, great fodder for cross-examination, and you go after them on that. We're almost done here. Do your homework. Oh yeah, my concluding thoughts. If you're gonna be a trial lawyer, you better have a big ego. And you better think I'm the best guy in the courtroom and the best woman in the courtroom, because the minute that doubt is there in front of a jury, in front of the judge or the other lawyer, you're gonna have a problem. So go in there like you own the place, and like you know what you're doing, because you do know what you're doing, you've got the skill, training, and the brains, but have some humility. It's not, lawyers are generally speaking not well regarded in society. We all know that, right? There's like a necessary evil, we've been called. And so when you're in front of a jury, be polite to the person you're cross-examining, okay? They're there, they probably don't want to be there, it's up to the experts. Be polite, show them some deference, don't make them feel dumb or stupid. And it doesn't go over well with the judge, and it probably doesn't go over well with the jury either. Listen to your expert rather than talk. Lawyers are full of opinions, right? One lawyer in town starves, two thrive, because they'll always argue everything to death. And that's something to remember, is that when you have some humility, you say to your expert, I don't understand this. Hone your ignorance. I'm constantly learning new things. And if you hone your ignorance and have that humility, you will do yourself a great service, because you will learn things, people will open up to you, you learn additional things, and it's very helpful in preparing for your case and helpful in dealing with clients as well. That's about all I've got to say, so I'll conclude on that.
We're open to questions too, so if anyone has questions for Paul, we have a few minutes, so feel free to shoot some questions.
What do you do when your witness gives one answer or during cross, and then later in the cross changes their story? Just kind of what do you do?
If you're cross-examining, they say one thing initially and then they say something differently. You just make a note of it, and then your submissions, you say, well, originally their answer was this, and 20 minutes later their answer was that. And that goes, depending on what you establish, go to the credibility or the reliability of the version of events. somebody, yeah.
Do you have any tips in terms of creating that sort of tree of, if they say this, I'll go this way? How do you lay that out visually to keep yourself clear which line of questions you're going to follow?
It's tough, and it's the most uncomfortable feeling is when you have to shift on the fly. So no, I don't have a flow chart for that. You could maybe do one, but expect the unexpected and adjust accordingly. You just have to adapt as you go. Somebody at the back had a question, yeah.
I have a question about how you deal, like how you rein in, I think what you call the talkative witness, but also maybe the evasive witness.
Yeah.
You put a yes or no question to them, and they'll talk around it, but they won't give you an answer. And maybe you put it to them again in another way, and again, they'll kind of circle around and give you an answer.
Yeah.
Like, how far do you pursue it until the judge realizes too that this person's just not gonna give you an answer?
I'll ask
Or
her.
to just get that yes or no?
Yeah, well, you can't answer the question with yes or no, you're gonna get shut down for doing that, you can't do that. But when you get the evasive answer that goes around the question, I asked the question 4 times. And then I'd say to the judge, I'd like a responsive answer from this witness, my lord. Would you please direct the witness to answer the question? And they'll do that, because they see it. That's what I do, and it seems to work. Anything else? Yeah.
How do you deal with witnesses, especially lay witnesses, when they're giving extremely long-winded answers and they just go off in tangents? And it's a pattern.
I sit down. If I'm crossing, I'm up there and, okay, witness. And they're going, I'm not writing anything down, judge isn't writing anything down. And I sit down. It's I'm going across, but I'll sit down.
Can you ever cut them off and say thank you for your answer? Or?
No. And then I'll say, are you done? Yeah, and they get the message, or the judge will intervene at some point and say, look, we really don't need to hear about all of that. The question was this, that's all we need to hear about. I had a case, here we go, war stories again, with a fight over a marijuana deal, and the plaintiff alleged that my guy beat him with a stick in order to settle a debt. And this guy was a heavy cannabis user, the plaintiff, and he'd smoked 8 joints before my guy picked him up, and they were going ATVing, and we had a guy with some mental problems in the back, and that's who the guy that actually clubbed the guy. But this guy would go on these rambling responses that had nothing to do with anything. It was Mr. Justice Block, and if you've ever been before Mr. Justice Block, he's very cut and dried and precise about things, which I love. And he just said to this guy, Sir, did you hear the question? He goes, what? The question was, da-da-da-da-da. And then he go on again, sir, no, the question was, da-da-da-da-da. And he did 3 or 4 times, but this guy was never gonna get any response, he's just out there, but that's what you do. Yeah. The judge will take control if it goes on too far. Somebody else had a question right there, yeah?
So it's from the perspective of a new lawyer entering into the litigation field.
Yeah.
You just mentioned that when you're cross-examining, you should take notes. So I was just wondering, like, you already have nerves, like, going into the courtroom, and so how do you, like, manage that, taking notes, and then do questions go, and also trying to make sure that you get the answer, and if in the middle of all these things you get the unexpected answer, and how do you manage that? Do you have any tips?
It sucks. But you have to. What I do is I'll have my trial book with all of my questions, and then I'll have like a yellow legal pad, and because I can't read my own writing at the time because I have to hurry, I write really big little pointed things that I want to come back to, and I tear it off, put it in like a folder, put it in the folder, and then I got all the stuff I wanted to get out, and that's how I do it, right? And I use shorthand. You come up with your own shorthand. LLPF, liar, liar, pants on fire. Right? That kind of stuff. You come with your own bits of shorthand that you know what it means, and that's how you do it. But 29 years later, I still find it hard to do. But I have the luxury now of a junior, so you get all that? Yeah. Okay, type it up and send it to me tonight. Yeah. But yeah, it's just something you have to learn to do. Anyone else?
Quick question.
Yeah.
On cross-examining police officers, do you have any special tips, like when you get a police officer who's, like you said, they won't they'll stick to their story even though it's ridiculous, and they'll, like, I find when they're using their notes, like, oh, if I go to my notes, that's what it means. Like, do you have any special tips? I've just had that happen a few times where the police officer just repeats the same, even if it's a ridiculous conclusion, like, just try to make it look ridiculous, or?
Yeah, cops are tough, because they're trained in giving evidence, and they always answer, no, your lord, yes, my lady, and they always say, look at me, I'm talking to you, right? You're trying to cross-examine, but they always look at the judge. So special tips, look at go to the surrounding circumstances and details that they won't remember. What was the other person involved wearing? Or they left out a detail that they should have made in their notebook. And I always take them through, all right, you're trained at the academy to keep a notebook, right? You go through all of that rigmarole. You're supposed to take notes, you're supposed to do it immediately thereafter because you're gonna get cross-examined on it at some point. You're gonna have to write a report to Crown Counsel, it's to refresh your memory, all these good reasons. And I say to them, and that was a really important fact, wasn't it? Yeah, not your notebook, is it? No, because it didn't happen. That's what I did. You never get the, yeah, I agree with you, but you get kind of a mopey look from them, and the judge makes a note, hopefully. So that's about the best you can do. But it can be a frustrating exercise, I think. Anything else? Okay, thanks very much. There's paper up here, so grab it. I just want to hand it out because if you're like me, I just start reading it and not listening to the guy talking. So.
All right, so yeah, thanks very much, Paul. We really appreciate you coming in. This is a small token of our appreciation.
Oh,
from
thanks
Chuck
very
Lawyers.
much. Appreciate it.
So everyone, yeah, if you want to stick around, we're going to have refreshments outside. Again, I want to thank our season sponsors, NSA, for sponsoring tonight. Feel free to talk to anyone else at Trial Lawyers tonight about membership or joining the listservs. They're all very helpful. And again, I'm joining in thanking Paul for coming out and speaking to us tonight.
Thanks, everyone. I'll just put these on the table, or you can pass them in the back, whatever you want to do. Want to pass